Adrien Broner's health is getting worse. The former four-division champion was recently rushed to the hospital on a stretcher and diagnosed with pancreatitis. But just hours after getting out, Broner was drinking again. And what happened to him days later has fans even more worried. Here's the full story. Let's start with what actually happened, because it moves fast. Adrien Broner was in the middle of a live stream when he was carried out on a stretcher. Concerns for Adrien Broner's health were raised again after several outlets revealed he was taken to a Las Vegas hospital on a stretcher during a live stream. This wasn't some rumor floating around a group chat. Footage showed assistants rushing around and putting a large screen up to block the background while Broner was carried out on a stretcher by his security team, which made the whole situation look confusing at first. Then the picture cleared up. His streaming partner Dean the Great was caught on a hot mic talking to Blueface. Dean apparently didn't realize Blueface's microphone was still live when he said Broner had been rushed to the hospital during the stream after becoming extremely intoxicated. The diagnosis that came back wasn't just too much to drink. Dean later shared a message he said came from Broner's doctor regarding the pancreatitis diagnosis and the potential consequences of continued heavy drinking. Pancreatitis. That's the pancreas, the organ your body needs to regulate blood sugar and digest food, inflamed and under attack. And doctors were telling him plainly what continuing to drink would do to it. Around the same window, separate posts online claimed Broner had also been told he was diabetic. Tying the pancreas damage to blood sugar problems, doctors were now flagging alongside the pancreatitis. Whichever term was used in different corners of social media, the underlying message from medical staff was the same. His organs were failing to keep up with the drinking, and he was being warned in direct terms about what came next. Dean didn't sugarcoat it when he talked to Blueface afterward. After Broner left the hospital, Dean warned Blueface about drinking around him, saying, "If he keeps drinking too much, he's gonna die." That's not a friend being dramatic for content. That's someone who had just watched Broner get wheeled out on a stretcher, repeating what a doctor apparently told him directly. Here's the part that stopped people cold. It wasn't days later. It wasn't even the next morning. Despite that warning, Broner was back to his old ways again within hours. Broner was subsequently taken away on a stretcher during a live stream before Dean revealed that the 37-year-old had been hospitalized with pancreatitis. And within hours of leaving the hospital, Broner was drinking again. Think about the timeline for a second. Man gets a pancreatitis diagnosis. Man gets a warning that continued drinking could kill him. Man is back on camera, drink in hand, before the day is out. During the subsequent live stream, Broner's condition grew increasingly uncomfortable for participants and viewers, with both Dean the Great and recording artist Ray J voicing significant concern over his level of intoxication. Dean reportedly said he'd never seen him like that and called it bad. That's someone who has known Broner through this entire ordeal, on camera, in real time, saying he'd never seen it get this far. It didn't stop at the live stream. Further footage from a club in Atlanta later showed Broner heavily intoxicated before he ultimately passed out on camera, not slurring his words, not stumbling. Passed out, filmed, and pushed out to thousands of viewers within hours of leaving a hospital bed. Then came the part that made this impossible to look away from. The boxing world got to see it too. Adrien Broner's battle with alcohol continued at Claressa Shields versus Kay Scott as the former four-division world champion appeared heavily affected backstage just days after being hospitalized with pancreatitis. Attending Saturday night's event at State Farm Arena in Atlanta as part of Ray J's streaming team. This wasn't a private stream with a few thousand people tuned in. This was a DAZN broadcast. Broner appeared heavily affected backstage alongside Ray J, and his condition was then shown on the arena's big screen in front of more than 16,000 people. 16,000 fans who came to watch a title fight ended up watching a former four-division world champion slumped on a jumbotron instead. There's no way to spin that as anything other than what it looked like. And the physical symptoms lined up with what the doctors had already flagged. Gagging can also occur with pancreatitis, adding further concern given Broner's recent diagnosis. Broner was seen drinking from a cup before immediately gagging, something World Boxing News had documented repeatedly during his alcohol-fueled live streams, and the incident came shortly after Dean revealed that Broner had been released by doctors. This is a body that's actively rejecting what's being put into it, on camera, at one of the biggest boxing events of that entire summer. The really unsettling detail is how close together all of this happened. Broner had vowed to quit drinking on August 6, while attempting to prepare for another boxing comeback. And days later, another period of drinking culminated in his hospitalization. According to Dean, less than 2 weeks from "I'm done drinking, I'm getting back in the gym" to a stretcher, a pancreatitis diagnosis, a relapse within hours, a passed-out live stream, and a jumbotron moment in front of a sold-out arena. Even the people who'd been cautiously hopeful started backing away from optimism. Days later, Broner attended Claressa Shields versus Kay Scott at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, where he appeared heavily affected backstage alongside Ray J. His condition then shown on the arena's big screen in front of more than 16,000 people. And behind the scenes, the person who had been documenting all of it hit a wall of his own. Following the Shields event, Dean reached his own limit and said he was done with the situation. That's the shape of the story right now. A diagnosis, a warning that death was on the table, a relapse measured in hours instead of days, and a public collapse broadcast to a sold-out arena. To understand how it got to this point, and whether there's any way out of it, we need to go back and look at who Adrien Broner actually is, what he built, and how much of it has already been lost. Which brings us to the people standing next to him while all of this plays out. Because a lot of this story isn't happening behind closed doors. It's happening in front of streaming cameras, with other public figures reacting in real time. To understand how alarming this stretch has been, you have to understand what Adrien Broner used to be. Broner isn't some journeyman who fell into hard times. Adrien Broner is one of only 16 fighters ever to win titles across 4 different weight classes, with a career record that at his peak stood at 33 wins against just 2 losses. 4 divisions. That's not a small club. That puts him in the same conversation as some of the most gifted boxers of his era. A fighter with speed, power, and the kind of showmanship that made him a draw, whether people were cheering for him or against him. He built a whole persona around it. The Problem. About billions. A guy who trash-talked his way into pay-per-view relevance and backed a lot of it up in the ring. He squared off against undefeated 3-division champion Mikey Garcia at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn in what was billed as the biggest fight of his career at that point. He fought Manny Pacquiao. He fought Marcos Maidana. He was a fixture on Showtime and DAZN cards for years. Someone promoters could build an entire event around. But the decline didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen quietly. Once Marcos Maidana walked through his shots in 2013, the blueprint was out. And since 2019, he's only fought a handful of times. For a fighter who already struggled with discipline, those long layoffs became career killers. The gaps between fights grew. The stories outside the ring started outweighing the ones inside it. His last time in the ring tells you where things stood professionally. BoxRec records show Broner has not competed professionally since June 2024, when Blair Cobbs defeated him by unanimous decision, with The Ring reporting that Broner, a former champion across 4 weight divisions, was knocked down during that fight, before losing on all 3 judges' scorecards. A knockdown, a unanimous decision loss. For a fighter who once talked about beating anyone in the sport, that was as clear a signal as it gets that the old version of Adrien Broner wasn't walking back through those ropes easily. And this current spiral isn't the first time people have used the word intervention about him. He was previously hospitalized in July 2021, and again in March 2022. At one point posting a video of himself in a wheelchair saying, "I'll get through it." That's years before the pancreatitis diagnosis. Years before Dean's hot mic moment, years before the Jumbotron at State Farm Arena. This has been building for a long time, with the same pattern repeating. A scare, a promise, a relapse. This wasn't the first time his health and lifestyle had raised serious concerns, and fans and insiders who viewed those earlier events as requiring intervention watched his struggles remain unaddressed. Late in 2025, there was a moment that looked like it might be different. On November 5, 2025, Broner returned to the gym and appeared focused, but the effort was short-lived. Days later, he posted an explicit clip showing him out of shape, followed by a disheveled video. That sequence underscored a year-long pattern of setbacks repeatedly interrupting his career. By the following spring, The concern had shifted from his boxing conditioning to something more basic, his ability to function day to day. A video surfaced of him needing help just to get around. A video showed the former champion asking for help with a ride, promising to pay the money back later, and the moment quickly spread online, shifting attention toward his situation outside the ring. This is a man who at his peak was pulling in 7 figures for a single night's work, reduced to asking a cameraman to cover an Uber. There's a financial backstory underneath all of this that makes the health decline even harder to separate from everything else going on in his life. Despite estimated career earnings of around $30 million, he openly discussed having as little as $13 in his bank account in 2020, and he owes over $800,000 from a 2018 civil lawsuit related to sexual assault. With his failure to pay that judgment and enroll in a court-ordered alcohol treatment program leading to jail time in 2020. That detail matters because it shows this isn't purely a drinking story. There's a court-mandated treatment program in his past that he didn't complete. There's a legal system that already tried to intervene once, formally, through a judge, and it didn't stick either. By this past summer, even people outside his immediate circle were watching him deteriorate in real time on camera. An appearance meant to reassure his fans instead did the opposite. Adrien Broner is 36. Yet another boxing comeback looks almost impossible after his latest troubling public appearance. He carried a noticeable pot belly, spoke slowly, and struggled to give coherent answers throughout the interview, losing track of questions and wandering into unrelated subjects. He even admitted that he could not remember an earlier video involving Slap Floyd. Boxing writers who cover him for a living didn't hedge about what they were seeing. Broner looked like someone requiring a complete personal overhaul before boxing should enter the conversation at all. And the hosts interviewing him weren't exactly helping matters. The hosts repeatedly praised his streaming success and treated his behavior as entertainment, giving him an opportunity to reassure supporters who feared he had fallen off the wagon. Broner denied it, but as one outlet put it plainly, without a miraculous turnaround, the former 4-division world champion's boxing career is finished. That's the man walking into this current stretch. Someone who built one of the more decorated resumes of his generation, who's already survived 2 prior hospitalizations tied to his health, who's already done jail time connected to failing court-ordered treatment, and who was already being told his career was over before the pancreatitis diagnosis and the stretcher even entered the picture. Which brings us to the people standing next to him while all of this plays out. Because a lot of this story isn't happening behind closed doors. It's happening in front of streaming cameras, with other public figures reacting in real time. None of this has unfolded in private. That's the part that separates Broner's decline from almost anyone else in boxing history. It's being live-streamed, reacted to, and commented on by other fighters in real time. Start with Dean the Great, because he's been the closest camera to all of it. Their relationship started as a business partnership that looked for a while like it might actually help. In July, Broner had joined Dean the Great for a 45-day livestream marathon built partly around getting back into shape. And he had also been talking publicly about returning to boxing and needing months of training before another serious run in the ring. That was the pitch, streaming as a bridge back to discipline, back to the gym, back to relevance. For a stretch, it looked like it might be working. Other fighters noticed and said so publicly. Adrien Broner's ongoing battle with alcohol prompted Arnold Barboza Jr. to send a public message of support. As Barboza had watched the situation unfold closely and initially hoped the move into streaming alongside Dean the Great could help turn his life and boxing career around, saying in May that Dean would forever be a legend if he could get Broner back into shape and fighting again. That was May. By August, after the pancreatitis diagnosis, after the relapse within hours, after the Jumbotron moment in Atlanta, Barboza's tone had shifted entirely. 3 months later, his outlook is considerably more concerning. Barboza didn't turn on Broner. He spoke like someone who understood addiction from the outside looking in, careful and direct at the same time. He said addiction has highs and lows in recovery, that a lot of people hold on to what that person once was, and that the thing with addiction is you can't control it because it consumes you. He closed with something close to a plea. He said Broner has to stop, that the world is watching this live and that he's praying for him. Dean himself hit his breaking point too. He'd spent months trying to use the platform as leverage to get Broner clean, and after watching him relapse within hours of a hospital discharge and then show up visibly impaired at a nationally broadcast event, he stepped back. Following the Shields event, Dean reached his own limit and said he was done with the situation. When the person documenting your recovery in real time says he can't do it anymore, that's not a small moment. Then there's Ray J, who was standing right next to Broner backstage in Atlanta the night the Jumbotron picked him up. He wasn't a bystander who happened to be in frame. He was actively voicing concern in the moment. Both Dean the Great and recording artist Ray J voiced significant concern over Broner's level of intoxication, with Dean reportedly saying he'd never seen him like that and calling it bad. Ryan Garcia's involvement adds another layer, because Garcia has been open about fighting his own battles. It started with that viral clip of Broner asking a cameraman to front him Uber money. After a video showed the former champion asking for help with a ride, Garcia quoted the clip on X and posted directly to Broner, writing that it was sad to see and asking him to call, saying, "Let's get you situated. No need to keep drinking. Let's be better." He wasn't dunking on him. The message struck a supportive tone rather than a critical one, with Garcia making clear he wants Broner to recover and refocus. Garcia's outreach carried weight precisely because he wasn't speaking from a distance. He understands the struggle firsthand. In recent years, Garcia admitted he battled alcohol problems and other personal issues. In his own words about that period, he described a stretch where he was doing everything: gambling, drinking, women, whatever I wanted to do, saying he was just destroying my soul, just destroying my spirit, and that everything took a toll on him. Months later, when Broner appeared to be showing signs of turning things around and talked about wanting a fight with Garcia, Garcia's response stayed in that same supportive lane rather than sliding into trash talk. Garcia congratulated the former 4-division champion for seemingly turning a corner while making clear a fight between them wasn't on his radar, writing that he was very happy that Adrien is locking in now and is going to take better care of himself. Gervonta Davis, who came up under Broner and once called him a mentor, has also spoken about watching this happen from the outside. Last year, former protege Gervonta Davis spoke openly about Broner's situation, saying it's heartbreaking to see. That's someone who idolized Broner as a kid, who modeled parts of his own career after him, now publicly describing what it's like to watch him struggle. It hasn't only been sympathy, though. Some of the incidents around Broner during this stretch have been ugly enough that people stepped in to shut them down. Even more incidents followed. Months later, Broner was removed from an interview by Cameron after reports indicated he harassed host Treasure Stat Baby Wilson during the appearance, with observers again believing he was under the influence. So by the time you reach the pancreatitis diagnosis and the stretcher, this isn't a story happening in a vacuum. It's a story with Barboza publicly praying for him, Dean hitting a wall after months of trying, Ray J standing next to him backstage, looking worried on camera, Ryan Garcia reaching out from his own recovery, Gervonta Davis calling it heartbreaking, and Cameron pulling him off a set entirely. That's not one person's opinion. That's a wide circle of the boxing and streaming world independently arriving at the same conclusion, that something serious is happening to Adrien Broner, and none of them know how to stop it. What makes it harder to untangle is that his health problems aren't sitting in isolation. They're tangled up with money trouble and legal history that stretch back years. And that combination is a big part of why every attempt at a comeback keeps collapsing before it starts. Health struggles rarely exist by themselves, and Broner's situation makes that painfully clear. Underneath the pancreatitis diagnosis and the stretcher moments sits a financial and legal history that's been quietly making everything worse for years. Start with the numbers because they're jarring on their own. Despite estimated career earnings of around $30 million, he openly discussed having as little as $13 in his bank account in 2020. A fighter who once commanded 7-figure purses for single nights of work was down to pocket change within a handful of years of his prime. That's not a story about bad investments. That's a story about a life that stopped being managed at some point. Then there's the legal weight sitting on top of that. He owes over $800,000 from a 2018 civil lawsuit related to sexual assault, and his failure to pay this judgment and enroll in a court-ordered alcohol treatment program led to jail time in 2020. Read that closely. It wasn't the initial legal matter alone that sent him to jail. It was failing to complete an alcohol treatment program a court had already ordered him into. That's a system that identified the drinking as a serious problem years before pancreatitis and stretchers entered the conversation, tried to force intervention through the courts, and watched him fail to comply. With debt that size and no boxing purses coming in, he's had to find other ways to generate income, and some of those methods say a lot about how far his earning power has fallen. More recently, he resorted to selling Instagram promotions for $350 to generate income. A man who once fought Manny Pacquiao for a share of a pay-per-view purse was charging a few $100s a post to keep money coming in. Streaming became the pivot point, the thing that was supposed to replace boxing income and, according to people like Barboza, maybe even lead back to it. But the same platform that gave him a paycheck also gave the entire internet a front-row seat to every relapse. Streaming has given supporters unprecedented access to Broner's life, meaning moments that would once have happened privately are now playing out in front of thousands of people. Watching a former four-division world champion reach the point where he needed to be taken away for medical treatment was not entertainment, and seeing him drinking again within hours made the scenes even harder to watch. That tension, needing the platform for income, while the platform simultaneously broadcasts every low point, is baked into nearly every recent headline about him. It raises real questions about the nature of that kind of content and its impact on vulnerable people, since Broner's current predicament isn't new. His public battle with alcohol has been documented for years, predating his involvement with streaming. Medical experts have been clear about why the pattern he's caught in is so dangerous, separate from any single hospitalization. Without speculating about Broner's specific condition, the medical risk behind excessive drinking is real. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism warns that extremely high blood alcohol levels can cause loss of consciousness and, in severe cases, death. That's not commentary from a boxing writer. That's a federal health agency describing exactly the kind of episode that put Broner on a stretcher. And that's before you add pancreatitis into the mix, which changes the calculation further. Pancreatitis flares get worse with repeated alcohol exposure. Every relapse isn't just a step backward. It's a fresh assault on an organ that's already been flagged as damaged. Gagging can also occur with pancreatitis, adding further concern given Broner's recent diagnosis. When you see him gagging on camera after a drink, that's not incidental footage. It's his body physically reacting to the exact thing doctors told him to stop doing. Broner has talked about the drinking publicly before, in more controlled settings than a live stream. The health concern hits differently, because the former champion has been unusually open about his relationship with alcohol before. In a 2023 interview with DayZen Boxing, Broner discussed his struggles with alcohol while attempting to rebuild his boxing career. He's even tried structured breaks from drinking in the past. Around that same period, World Boxing News reported that Broner had started a 30-day cleanse and asked people around him not to offer him drinks because he believed he would accept them. That detail is worth sitting with. He knew years ago that he couldn't trust himself around alcohol if it was offered. He asked people directly not to put it in front of him. And yet the more recent footage shows him surrounded by exactly that: cameras, crowds, and drinks being handed to him on stream, in an environment engineered around content rather than recovery. There was a brief window this year where the story bent toward hope instead of alarm. Amid viral controversies, the former four-division champ said he was sober, back in the gym, and chasing one more belt before walking away from boxing, publicly talking about training again and insisting there's at least one more title run left before he retires for good. During a live stream appearance with Dean the Great in Miami, Broner repeatedly brought the conversation back to boxing, even as the stream drifted into jokes, nightlife talk, and fan interaction. That was in the spring. By August, the pancreatitis diagnosis had arrived. The stretcher had arrived. The Jumbotron moment at State Farm Arena had arrived, and the boxing comeback talk had effectively evaporated under the weight of everything else happening to his body. So the picture that forms isn't just a man who drinks too much. It's a man carrying $800,000 in unpaid legal judgment, sustaining himself through $350 Instagram posts, streaming his life for income on a platform that broadcasts his worst moments to strangers, sitting on a pancreatitis diagnosis doctors have warned could be fatal if the drinking continues, and cycling through hope and relapse in a loop that's now measured in hours rather than months. Every piece feeds the others. The money pressure keeps him streaming. The streaming keeps him around alcohol and around cameras. The alcohol keeps hitting an organ that's already damaged. And the damage keeps producing headlines that follow him into every future conversation about a comeback. So where does all of this leave Adrien Broner? Right now, today. The boxing comeback talk hasn't disappeared entirely, but the people covering the sport closely have stopped treating it as realistic. Any ring return would require Broner to lose considerable weight and follow a disciplined routine for months. And while his age technically leaves enough time, his present condition provides no reason to believe that transformation will happen. That's not a fan reacting emotionally to a bad night. That's a boxing outlet, looking at footage of a man who once held 4 world titles, concluding there's no evidence pointing toward recovery. Broner himself hasn't gone quiet about it. In that same interview, where he struggled to track the conversation, he pushed back on the idea that things had spiraled out of control. Broner denied that everything had gotten out of hand, but his response offered little comfort. He did offer one moment of something closer to honesty about the toll this has taken on the people closest to him. During the interview, Broner said that it hurt his friends to watch him in that bad of it, without explaining exactly what had happened. That's about as close as he's come publicly to acknowledging the weight of what everyone around him has been saying for months. Barboza's message about addiction consuming a person. Dean's warning that continued drinking could kill him. Gervonta Davis calling it heartbreaking. Ray J's visible concern backstage in Atlanta. Broner isn't denying that people are hurting watching this. He's just not connecting it, publicly at least, to the diagnosis sitting behind it. The pancreatitis itself doesn't resolve on its own timeline, the way a bruise or a sprain does. It's a condition that flares with alcohol exposure and calms with abstinence, which means every relapse, including the one that happened within hours of his hospital discharge, resets whatever progress his body might have made toward healing. Doctors don't warn patients that continued drinking could eventually cost him his life as a throwaway line. Doctors claimed that continuing to drink could eventually cost him his life. That's a direct clinical statement about mortality risk, not a scare tactic dressed up for social media. And the pattern since that warning hasn't broken in the direction anyone close to him was hoping for. The relapse within hours moment wasn't a one-off either. It's part of a documented cycle stretching back years, through the 2021 and 2022 hospitalizations, through the court-ordered treatment program he didn't complete, through the 30-day cleanse he once tried and abandoned, through the sobriety claims made this past spring that didn't survive the summer. What's changed this time isn't the underlying behavior, it's the scale of who's watching and the specificity of the medical warning attached to it. 16,000 people at State Farm Arena saw him on a jumbotron. Millions more have seen the clips online since. A named medical diagnosis, pancreatitis, with reports of diabetes concerns circulating alongside it, is now attached to his name, in a way that alcohol struggles alone never quite carried before. There's a difference between he's been drinking too much and doctors have told him this specific organ is failing and continuing could kill him. The second one doesn't leave much room for ambiguity about the stakes. The people around him haven't abandoned him, even the ones who've hit their limit emotionally. Dean stepping back after the Shields event doesn't read like someone washing his hands of Broner entirely. It reads like someone who ran out of tools to help and needed distance. Barboza's message stayed open-ended, praying rather than condemning. Ryan Garcia's outreach is still sitting there, an open invitation to call rather than a closed door. Gervonta Davis's heartbreak was never framed as giving up on him. None of the people who know Broner best have written him off completely, even as the footage keeps getting harder to watch. What's missing, at least publicly, is any sign of a structured recovery process actually taking hold. No announced rehab stay, no confirmed treatment program, no extended break from the cameras that have captured every low point over these past months. The court-ordered program from 2020 didn't stick. The 30-day cleanse didn't stick. The vow to quit drinking on August 6 didn't survive the following week. Each attempt has been shorter than the last, and each relapse has landed in front of a bigger audience than the one before it. That's the state of things as of now. A former 4-division champion, with a pancreatitis diagnosis, a documented history of relapsing within hours of leaving medical care, a financial situation built on streaming income that keeps him in front of the exact environment his own doctors have warned him against, and a circle of people around him who are running low on ways to help, even as none of them have stopped trying. The stretcher, the jumbotron, the hot mic warning, none of those were isolated incidents. They're the latest data points in a pattern that's been building for years. And based on everything that's happened since that pancreatitis diagnosis came through, shows no sign of correcting itself on its own.